A teenager accused of strangling his on-again, off-again girlfriend to death while on a beach trip will soon head to trial. We're taking a look at this chilling case and the circumstances surrounding this young woman's death. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now here's a story that you probably heard before. Two teens decide to go on a big trip with friends after graduation from high school, right? It is a big milestone, happens all the time, a lot of people do it. 18-year-old Natalie Martin and her one-time boyfriend Blake Linkous packed up, headed off to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. It happened back in June of 2023. But what sets this apart is that on this particular trip, only one of them would return, and more specifically return to Duncan Falls, Ohio. And that is because authorities say Linkous killed Natalie and then tried to take his own life before he got caught. Now, after nearly 2 years, his trial date is finally approaching. To talk more about this, what is a very strange and unsettling case, I want to bring on friend of the show, criminal defense attorney Tyler Bailey. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time. Sad case, because you have two young people who just graduated high school, should be the start of their lives, both 18 at the time. They're celebrating a big milestone. They're getting ready to start, the next chapter, when both of their lives are now changed forever. And what was your reaction when you first heard about this case?
Yeah, first, it's a sad case, a tragic case with two young 18-year-olds from Ohio. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina is a place where people visit from all over the country now. And you have two kids with their friends on a senior graduation trip. And usually you don't see this type of domestic violence that's fatal with this type of young people, right out of high school. So that's the first thing that really shocked me, was the sheer level of violence with this murder of this beautiful young lady, and it being a graduation trip at that. It's just a terrible case.
Let's get into this a little bit, because I have to set the stage so we understand exactly what we're talking about, what the allegations are. So we go back to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina in June of 2023. You have a group of friends from Philo High School traveled around 500 miles to the beach, where they were reportedly staying at a rental property. And Brooklyn Farrell, who identified herself as one of Natalie's longtime friends, told Fox News that while she wasn't on the trip, she had been in close contact with other mutual friends who were there, as well as Natalie's mom, about everything that transpired. She apparently tells Fox that Linkous and Natalie, they were high school sweethearts, but they were apparently no longer dating. And they apparently had a fight while they were on the trip because Natalie had been texting another man. So the night that Natalie died, the friends apparently went out to a club, but Natalie said she wasn't feeling well, so she left early and went back to the rental with Linkous. However, when a few of the other friends apparently got back to the home, they reportedly noticed several strange things. First, Brooklyn says that the friends knocked at the front door, but no one came to let them in, so they had to go through the back of the house. Then, one of them said they heard 3 loud thuds. This is again according to Brooklyn. So they went out to the living room to see what was going on, but they didn't see anything. They reportedly tried the door to the room where Linkous and Natalie were allegedly sleeping, but it was reportedly locked. So then they went back to bed, and Brooklyn told Fox News that everyone in the group was home and asleep by 7 a.m. However, 2 hours later, Linkous allegedly burst out of the room, bleeding and screaming. Screams this over and over again, apparently. Natalie's not waking up. Now, according to Brooklyn, Linkous had apparently stabbed himself in the chest, possibly in an attempt to take his own life, and that's why he was bleeding. At least 2 of Natalie's friends said they tried to do CPR on her, but that it was way too late. Her body was reportedly cold. It was stiff. It is believed that Linkous was likely in that room with Natalie's body for hours. Hey, I want to quickly thank today's sponsor that helps make episodes of Sidebar like this one possible, Saily. Now, Saily is an incredible eSIM service app. So I recently went on vacation to Italy. Saily is something I could download on my phone because I used so much data while I was away. While everybody else was dealing with roaming fees and having issues with their cell data, you can use Saily as a hotspot to easily plan your activities. And with the Saily app, getting an eSIM really couldn't be simpler, because you just buy a plan on the Saily app and you activate it. Once you have it activated, you're good to go. You can use the internet wherever you go. Once the Saily eSIM is installed, by the way, there's no need to install a new one for each country. The same eSIM can use plans that are available in over 190 countries. So just go to Saily.com/sidebar or click the link in the description or pinned in the comments to get an exclusive 15% discount on Saley data plans. And be sure to use our code SIDEBAR at checkout. That is Saley.com/sidebar, promo code SIDEBAR. Now, Tyler, lot to talk about here. You have an account from a witness who maybe wasn't there and is getting this information from other people. Talk to me about the reliability of this.
Well, immediately, if this was in the court of law, it would be hearsay if she was the one testifying as to what she heard. But right here, her talking to the media, she's saying that she heard this from credible people, Natalie's mother and others who were inside the room that day. And it sounds kind of realistically like this could have been possible. The three does. That could have been the altercation, the strangulation, maybe some sort of tussle. And then the fact that the body of Natalie was cold, it seemed as if she was in there for hours, would kind of corroborate the story from the friends who had to go through the back door. They tried to knock on the door that nobody answered. And then Linkous eventually comes out of it screaming. So it sounds like this could possibly come up in the actual trial. This case, we may hear this from the prosecution when these others are called as witnesses. And now that she's injected herself into it, she may eventually be a witness in this case as well.
And look, Linkous, he was charged with 1 count of murder. According to an arrest warrant from Horry County, South Carolina, it reads, on or about June 6, 2023, while in the Myrtle Beach section of Horry County, the defendant Blake William Linkous did with malice aforethought cause the death of, and then it's redacted here, but the victim was identified as Natalie Martin. The defendant did so by manually strangling the victim. This was determined by evidence gathered at the incident location, as well as statements made by witnesses. Again, a lot to break down here. First, talk to me about what we're saying when we talk about malice aforethought.
Yeah, it's saying that this was deliberate. He planned this out. He thought about it before he did this action. They could have charged him with second-degree murder or acting in a heat of passion, but that's not what happened here. They're saying that he acted with malice, a depraved heart, that he intentionally took her life and thought about it before he did so.
How do they know that? How can they prove that? How can they prove what happened behind closed doors? Because based on the evidence that we know right now, it doesn't seem to suggest there were any witnesses to the actual alleged killing, right? Just what people observed before and kind of after. How can they determine what actually happened between Natalie and Linkous?
Well, they can charge based off of circumstantial evidence. And given the statement that we know was made to the media by a friend, about there being 4 hours or a long time before they had the opportunity to perform CPR on Natalie, it goes to lead one to believe that after he killed Natalie, that he allowed her body to sit there. He thought about it. If this was a truly heat of passion thing, more than likely after he realized what he was doing, he would have maybe barged out the room, called law enforcement.
Unless he was in shock, right?
Yeah, but then again, maybe the trying to kill yourself afterwards shows that he was trying to either escape responsibility for what he did. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I think he was charged with murder in this situation. And mainly, I think the most damning evidence would be the time frame that we had, and there really be probably no evidence of any type of defensive wounds on him. That we haven't got there yet, but if there was defensive wounds, I could see that being maybe a cause for second-degree manslaughter or something like that.
Do you think that, I can't confirm what the defense is going to be arguing, but do you think that's an avenue, trying to downgrade it to manslaughter? There was no malice aforethought here. It was, like you said, it was a passion, it was a heat of passion kind of situation, because again, I think what might complicate that from the classic law school example where we talk about somebody comes home, sees their spouse cheating, they take a gun and shoot. That's such an instant form of violence. Strangulation, though, in your opinion, have you seen strangulation actually be in a case where it's downgraded from murder to manslaughter? Can strangulation, even though it takes more effort and more time than shooting somebody, can that be a form of manslaughter?
They can try, but, it takes effort, time, strength to actually strangle somebody. I think that goes towards the murder fact. And I'm not sure if the defendant here, Linkous, actually said that he stabbed himself. Maybe they try to use that to say that he was stabbed by her at some point. I'm pretty sure the evidence is going to reveal itself regarding timeline. But I don't see that being enough for realistically having this be a good argument for, manslaughter, heat of passion, just because the sheer brutal effort it takes to strangle somebody to death.
In the filing I mentioned, I said it means evidence gathered at the scene. What does it mean, evidence gathered at the scene or evidence gathered at the incident? So not just the witness testimony, but evidence gathered at the incident to prove that this was a strangulation incident and a murder.
Yeah, there'll probably be blood splatter evidence on the ground, possibly the stab wound that he stabbed himself. It could be furniture knocked over. It could be pictures of where her body was when the friends ran in there to do CPR. That's just at the scene. We're still going to probably find out digital evidence, whether it's text messages that were sent by Linkous, by Natalie, and by others leading up to the event. So I'm pretty sure that Horry County has a lot of evidence on their hands to move forward with this prosecution.
Can you determine from either fingerprint impressions, fingernail evidence, DNA, whether somebody had their hands around somebody's neck? Assuming that's what happened.
You can easily.
Assuming that's what happened.
Yeah. They will be able to determine that. And then, these strangulations are brutal. A lot of times there's, as you know, Jesse, fractures of cervical spine and neck. I'm not a pathologist, but how you breathe in and out, all that evidence is highly documented. Coroner's office would have been a thorough investigation of this. So there's probably going to be a lot of, unfortunately, tragic evidence to read about how this murder occurred.
Now, we always say, alleged murder, right? He's innocent until proven guilty. I will say there was one thing I haven't mentioned yet, and that is that during a bond hearing, so several days after Linkous's arrest, the prosecutor said that Linkous confessed to police that he strangled Natalie after that argument the night before. And he also allegedly confessed to trying to take his own life. Now, Tyler, if that is true, how does a defense attorney work with that?
That's going to be hard evidence to overcome, right? You could try to see if you can keep it out. I highly doubt they'll be able to keep that out.
How would they keep it out? How could defense attorneys try to keep that out?
You could try to say that he wasn't properly Mirandized before. It could have been elicited in a wrongful way by the officers. Maybe he actually requested the presence of a lawyer before he gave the statement. That's what I would try to do. If there's any way that these statements could be kept out, hopefully they're kept out. It being referenced on the bond hearing is already on the record. I mean, jurors, it'll be hard to screen jurors out. This is a high profile case down there. He's going to have to look for mitigation, whether it's state of mind, maybe he's suffering some mental illness. He's young. Maybe you think he can get a good plea here, given his age and his possibly admission. There's two thoughts. He could either be looking to mitigate this for purposes of a plea or figuring out how he could defend this before a jury and possibly either get a acquittal on one charge or a reduction to another.
If this really was a statement that was made and it's going to come into evidence, is there going to be a video of this statement? Is there going to be an audio of this statement? How many times are there circumstances where a defendant would admit this to law enforcement and it wasn't captured on some sort of electronic medium?
Given the facts of this case, where there was a bunch of friends who were there as well, who probably would have to call law enforcement, and he was eventually arrested later on, I would think that the Horry County Police Department would really be methodical on how they conducted any interview of the alleged murderer. And that would have been recaptured either in the interrogation room, body camera footage, or even in the video cameras that are inside the police vehicles while transporting him to the station.
Obviously, it's the defendant's choice to take the stand, but in a case like this, and we don't have the full details, obviously, there's limited information, you think there would be a benefit for him to explain his side of the story?
No, absolutely not. Not on this case. I just think there's nothing good that could probably come out from him. In a case like this, I mean, she's a young woman who lost her life. Jurors are looking for somebody who could be held accountable for this. And one small mistake on the stand would almost certainly result in conviction.
I'm glad you mentioned this because that leads me to the next point. So the defense wanted Linkous to be placed under house arrest with his parents back in Ohio. Now, Natalie's family wasn't at the bond hearing, but they sent a statement to the court that said he should never, ever be free again, let alone alive to taste and feel freedom after 3 weeks when he took our beautiful daughter from this world. Anyone who feels different should truly feel ashamed of themselves. With right and wrong so undefined in the times we all lived in, this should be an easy choice. Now, the judge determined that Linkous should get a $150,000 surety bond, noting his lack of criminal history. And so Linkous signed a waiver of extradition. He's had to wear a GPS monitor since his release. Tyler, why not listen to the family here?
I think they should have listened to the family here. And I'm a defense lawyer, as you know, and all about people, they're innocent until they're proven guilty. all right, and people should be given a reasonable bond. Here's why I think they should have denied bond in this case, is that he attempted to kill himself before. And so there's different parts of the criminal justice system, the punishment of the defendant, but also you got to think about the victim's rights here, that they want to see some sort of justice and vindication through the courts. God forbid this young man attempt to take his life again, or he's successful in doing it. I'm pretty sure there'll be a pit that the family's already dealing with, knowing that there's nothing that comes out of it. That is a legitimate risk that could happen.
And there's no way to really prevent it, right? In the sense that if you're locked up, he's monitored. GPS, he's monitored, but in a different way. He's monitored his movements, not his actions inside of a home or not. So that's a problem. I did want to ask you about this because you brought it up before. So according to Brooklyn, this wasn't the first time that Linkous have reportedly gotten violent with Natalie, because she told Fox News that in February, before graduation, several friends were present when Linkous allegedly assaulted Natalie at a party. Brooklyn described it as him, quote, throwing her across the room. He's a wrestler, football player, apparently known for his temper. Natalie had broken up with him, and Brooklyn said Linkous had apologized several times and was trying to win Natalie back. Now, Tyler, another allegation of domestic violence, clearly would be good evidence for the prosecution. My question is, does it actually come in a trial, or is it prejudicial?
I think it's prejudicial. I don't see it coming in at a trial unless he gets on the stand, or unless the defense opens the door for some sort of character evidence of Linkous. If he, for example, somehow said something about him being a peaceful young man, immediately for impeachment testimony purposes, that could come in if there is a way to get it in without being hearsay. How can they get it in? Will be something that the prosecution will have to figure out. But I do think if he took the stand and the door is open and the prosecution has an opportunity to get that statement, information before a jury, they will certainly do so.
So his trial is expected to start next week, and hopefully we'll get a lot more information about it from local reporting. What do you look for in jury selection, both for the prosecution and the defense here?
This is for the prosecution. I think that I would love to have, if I was prosecuting this case, women who are on the jury, fathers who are on the jury, parents on the jury. It could cut both ways, because, you could have some parents thinking out there like this could be their son, and hopefully looking for a way that their son would not be in a situation like this. But usually the protector and people, I think, would really lean towards more towards a conviction. Now, on the defense side, I would try to look for people who may be distrustful, or a background that may not be as trustful of law enforcement. Mind you, here, there are no witnesses that actually saw the murder that happened. Everything's based off of circumstantial evidence and the testimony of the defendant. If they can keep some evidence out, there's really no evidence of who saw this. And if the defense has a theory of how this occurred, and it maybe it was self-defense, or it should be reduced to a lesser included offense, is something that the defense should try to do. But it's really a difficult case of defense. Mitigation is probably what I would assume that they're looking at. It's been about 2 years since this happened. So we'll see what happens next week if they actually strike a jury and go forward with this trial.
It's our understanding that he faces at least 30 years in prison if he's convicted, all the way up to a life sentence. If he's convicted for a crime like this, given this fact pattern, given these circumstances, what do you think a potential punishment could be for him?
I think he has the potential of doing the max with this. He's young. That's one thing he has to benefit him. He is a young man. He's maybe 20 years old now. He was 18 when it happened. But I do think if he's convicted, if he goes to trial and he's convicted, I think that the judge would give him the maximum penalty.
Let me end it a little bit back on Natalie here, because we talked so much about Linkous and the legal issues. So according to her obituary, Natalie had been working as a child care provider at a local daycare when she was killed, taken away from her family and friends. She had formed special bonds with the little ones that she cared for. Her obituary also stated she had a free, pure, and wild spirit with a contagious laugh, personality out of this world that could bring anyone out of their darkest of days. Natalie enjoyed all of nature's beauty. She loved to hunt, shoot guns, fish, wrangle snakes, plant and nurture flowers, and could gut and skin a deer better than most grown men. It's just a really sad case. Talk about a young life taken way too soon. Tyler Bailey, thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, really, really sad case there. Thank you so much for joining us here on Sidebar. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.